Hey, it's Q. So let's get right into this. I want to make this perfectly clear that the gentleman's footage that I am using now, I'm just using this footage this way to prove the point. It's something that a lot of YouTube channels, particularly the big one, Titler with his Suck Your Team, have done in the past where they have lied, they have been deceptive with the likes of the Can the Astronomer video where it was them using a voice changer. But anyway, I've just recently done a live stream with friends of mine that I have known for years. We all have different opinions over UFOs, and we discuss them, we discuss cases, and we try and get deeper into the facts. Not for entertainment purposes, but to see if we can actually find something, because the group have different backgrounds and we all have very, very different opinions on the subject. Right. The question I asked those guys was, how do you feel about YouTubers using a piece of footage where they know damn well that the piece of footage will prove that this is not a UFO, but instead they will just use a small segment of the footage and say, oh, it's a UFO. Oh, look at the anti-gravity circles and shit like that, when they know damn well that if somebody is to show the full footage, it proves it's not. So let's get into this gentleman's footage. The gentleman who filmed this, Dave Falch, I will be putting a link down to him, as it will be with all of the actual videos that I talk about, because I'm going to talk about a couple of people in this community at the moment, and some of them I don't like, but you'll understand why at the end of this. Just to make it perfectly clear, if you don't like this video, piss off now. Just do one. Couldn't be asked. Right, so here we go. Dave Falch was never intending this footage to be used this way, but this is how the likes of his footage and this particular piece of footage will be abused by some of the idiots in the community. And you will do, won't you, Titler? But anyway, let's get on with this. This is all legitimate flare footage. There is no CGI in this footage. But people will say, oh, look at the circles going around it. That's proof of anti-gravity. I mean, you saw the birds are flying by there. Well, yeah, that's because birds fucking fly. Jesus. Some people will say, well, some people say this is proof of interdimensional travel. This is proof of... Yeah, well, for all those people, piss off, get a fucking life. So, here's the footage. I am only showing you part of it, but that is the whole point of this video. People who only show you a small segment of a video. As I will show you the full video at the end, which shows you exactly what we're looking at. Right? So, I mean, to me, it's a disc-shaped craft. This could be a UFO. These rings around it could be some sort of proof of interdimensional shit. It's not, but it could be. But this will be abused. Right. So, let's show it again. Now, some people would say, well, this can be shown as entertainment purposes. Yeah, it can be. But if you're coming onto YouTube and looking for entertaining UFO footage, then you're not really the type of UFO person that I want to talk to. I want to know what the actual phenomena is because I do fully believe that aliens exist in the universe. I'm just stuck on have they been here? And we only need one video to be true. My last video was talking about CGI fakery, which I also despise. But anyway, that was a different video. So, you've seen the snippet that I've been showing. What do you think right at the moment? I'm sure there's some of you that are thinking, that is awesome footage. And it is awesome footage. It's just not a UFO. Now, if you notice during this, we have flickers going around this UFO, and a couple of them from time to time almost look as they're protruding. I'm sure I'm getting that word wrong, but fuck it. But they're protruding. I am getting that wrong, aren't I? Anyway, they're sticking out from the UFO. Now, the funny thing is, if you were to look at a certain gentleman's footage who came into the community quite recently, over the last couple of years, and I'll talk more about him in a minute. He showed a piece of footage of a UFO, and the UFO actually turns on its side, almost like, let's just say this is a plane, for example, and this was to suddenly try and pull a hard left. It would turn on its side and it would pull a number of G's as it does a hard left. Well, one of his pieces of footage actually has little flickers of light coming out here and here on his piece of footage. But it's obviously not a UFO. Or at least that's what's implied by the way it's shown. And also, the three pieces of footage of that gentleman, and I'm using that word extremely loosely, all his footage is snippets of full footage. But I'll get back into that in a minute when I'm talking about that friggin' idiot. So here we go. Dave's footage once again. Interdimensional anti-gravity circles. Friggin' hell, these birds flying by are probably a phenomenon that are coming off the spacecraft. Yeah. But anybody that thinks that, yeah, just do one and stop watching the video. Because if you don't like what I've said now, you're not going to like what I have to say shortly. Look at the spacecraft flying away. I mean, I'm not sure what the speed of this thing is right at this moment in time, but I'm sure it's going pretty fast. So, in the community, I'm just going to keep looping this while I continue to talk. In the community recently, we've had a new piece of footage. I suppose you call it the splashdown footage. And when it came down, you know, we have this craft going across the screen that ends up splashing down into the water. The reason it's referred to as that is because the person talking when this happens goes, "Oh, splashdown." Well, everybody that thinks that object splashes down in the water, what you need to do is, if you wear glasses, put them on, clean them, and look at what is showing in the video. Because the object doesn't splash down in water. It goes over the horizon. And as it goes over the horizon, for a split second, you see it reappear. The reason for that is because you're looking over a water scenery. And water, although if it's not moving, can be flat. We're looking over a sea scenery, and there's a thing called waves and swell. And as it ducks behind the horizon, for a split second you see it almost reappear again. It looks like it pops up more than it does, but that's because of camera glare. That's just a thing that happens with cameras when you're looking at a bright object. So it doesn't pop back up suddenly, it just appears to pop back up, but it certainly doesn't splash down as the video implies. That fucking idiot Jeremy Corbell, also did a pyramid video. Well, his pyramid video is also bullshit, because if you look at it, you can see the friggin' lights on it flashing. You know the way planes have lights on top and bottom? So that in the dark they can be identified, so that you can tell whether you're above them or below them or behind them. You know the way they have lights like that? Well, you can see the lights on the video. And I may actually at some point do a video on exactly how to fake that, where I can make house lights look like a friggin' triangular UFO. I can even make them look like a friggin' Christmas tree. And I shit you not. It's so simple, so easy. It's extremely deceptive, but people can do this. Right, so anyway, let me get on to the other fucktard that I want to talk about. Lou Elizondo, or however you say his fucking name. I really don't care. But he's a friggin' idiot as well. He recently came into the community with these 3 awesome pieces of footage. Now, his background jobs, which give him the godlike notoriety in the community, which he doesn't deserve, because he just regurgitates the same shit over and over and over again. His original job, he was working for the American government, and he was an intelligence guy to do with threats to American airspace. Okay, an important job. He then moved from there to ATIP. And if you don't know what ATIP is, it's the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now, that is a huge title, and he was a director as well. So he wasn't just some noob in there. This guy will have had a budget to investigate the likes of footage that he was able to get his hands on. It's a pity he did such a piss poor job of it. Now, 2 out of his 3 videos, one of them is really hard to tell what it is. It's probably some sort of a craft. On all of these pieces of footage, everything you see, you will literally see 12 to 40 odd seconds of a video where the actual video was a hell of a lot longer, but we don't get to see that, unfortunately. But one of his pieces of footage, like I said before, looked like this, except the craft turns on its side. Partway through its flight or whatever the hell it's doing. And as I say, let me pause this. Even on his footage, you see these bumps here. You will realise what those little bumps are soon. And as you're watching this in infrared, you'll notice that there's all flickering around it. This object, which I will show, does not look like this when you turn the flare off, which I will show shortly. And I fully believe that if the flare had been turned off with the footage that come from Lou, you would see exactly what the object was. Now, one of his pieces of footage as well also showed I suppose we can only describe it as a dot, a little round-ish ball moving over water. And again, this is going out there as UFO footage. Lou hasn't even got the balls when he's being interviewed. He's been asked the question, do you think it's a UFO? And it's at that point, although he's come into the community and is willing to say, oh yes, I know this, that and the other. I was in charge of these programs. These were my job titles and descriptions and this, that and the other. He's not prepared to say the answer, yes or no, when it comes to UFOs. And the way he gets out of answering that question, he sounds so much like a fucking politician. He says, well, you know, I don't want to say anything that goes against my non-disclosure. Well, if you don't want to say anything about your non-disclosure, why are you talking in the first fucking place? Don't come on, give us snippets of information and make out that you know all this information and then say, oh no, my NDA, I don't want to break it. Not because I would be breaking what I signed with the American government, but the fact that I don't want to break my trust in the American public. Okay, so you don't want to break your trust with the American public, but you're going to come on UFO channels, television channels, news channels, radio stations, and you're going to talk about how you want the American government to put this information out themselves. Why don't you fucking just tell us what you know instead of beating around the frigging bush? Now, as I say, Lou's footage, a lot of it, I think, is bullshit. One of them is, in my opinion, the one that looks like this, is definitely a plane. The one that is the dot going over the ocean, I believe it's a frigging bird. Now, people, when I first mentioned this, when it first came out, and that's, well, over a year ago, people said, no, Q, you're wrong. Well, I might be wrong. I'm not a fucking professional. Anybody that says they're a professional in the UFO community, tell them to fuck off, because they're talking shit. There ain't no professionals in this community. There's only people guessing and assuming and trying to find the truth, like myself and so many others. So, I believe that one's a bird. And the argument against it is it's moving too fast over the water. No, it's not moving too fast. In actual fact, it's moving the speed that a bird could move while flying over water. The reason it looks as though it's moving so fast, if you look on the actual footage of that video, it says to the right hand side how far away the plane is from this object, and the object is estimated to be between 1 meter and 1.5 meters. That can easily be the wingspan of a plane, of a bird, I should say. The plane is moving in the opposite direction. The plane is a fighter plane, so it's not doing 20 miles an hour. It's travelling at a decent speed. And the reason the object, what I'm calling a bird, appears to be moving so fast is because of the point of perspective from the camera that was recording it, and nothing more. It's a friggin' bird. And Lou, with the money and the backing that he had, I'm surprised nobody in his awesome team of scientists ever said, do you know what, that could be a bird. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. The other thing I'd like to say about Lou is he always goes on about how pilots don't get it wrong. Well, I'm sorry, Lou, but you are wrong when you say that. Lou did an interview on the History Channel, links will be below, where right before he actually says this, there was a gentleman on, a fighter pilot for the US Army, and all respect to the gentleman. You know, he's done a fine job in his career. He says that he sees these UFOs on a daily basis. Well, I'm sure he does see strange things while he's out doing whatever he was doing on his missions. But Lou uses the point of, oh, pilot. It costs the American government millions to train these guys. I mean, just the equipment alone that they're using costs a frigging arm and a leg. And I'm not arguing that point, but they are human and they do make mistakes. Because right before Lou makes that statement on that video, the pilot, the lieutenant who is being interviewed, and I'm not going to call that gentleman out. If you want to see that footage, you can go and actually look at it yourself on the History Channel. As I say, all links will be below. That gentleman is looking at a piece of Lou's footage, the one that looks like this, and says something that's interesting is the fact that there's no smoke trails. Well, look at this footage. Where's the smoke trail? There isn't one. Now, just by that pilot saying that it's interesting that there's no smoke trails implies that this is something unusual. But when I show you this full video and you see this object in daylight without the flare turned on, guess what? You can't even see the smoke trails there. People always seem to assume that if it's a plane, we're going to see smoke trails. That is incorrect. And for people to say, well, if there's no smoke trails, I know the pilot doesn't say this, but if people say, like Hitler and suck your team, if people like him say, oh, well, if it was a plane, it should have smoke trails, tell them to do one, because they're talking through their arse. In actual fact, not all planes have smoke trails. Only a few of them do. And that's fact. Right, so let me carry on playing this footage while I keep looping it for you just to try and keep you entertained, because I'm sure you all want to know what you're actually looking at. Another thing about Lou, when he was at A-Tip, they had a thing that they used to use as some, if you like, some basic rules, things to look at. They called them the 5 observables. These were things where when you look at an object, if they show these or any of these 5 things, they've shown that they were of interest. Lou was on an interview with the Washington Post, and again, I will link this down below, where he's talking to a lady, and he goes through the 5 observables, and this is, I am paraphrasing, but this is what Lou says. The first of it, observable is hypersonic velocity. The second observable is hypersonic velocity. The third observable is cloaking and low observability. Freaking hell, I can't get my words out right at the moment. I guess I'm too excited doing this video. And the fourth one is transmedium travel. Transmedium travel, by the way, is when an object is able to move from, let's say, flying through the air to flying through the water, or even flying through space with no perceivable effect on it. So, yes, in that interview, he mentioned 4 things, and one of them he mentioned twice. So in actual fact, he mentioned 3 things. In actual fact, the 5 observabilities are anti-gravity lift. The second is sudden and instantaneous acceleration. The third is hypersonic velocities without signatures. The fourth is low observability or cloaking. And the fifth is trans-medium travel. Now, I would expect somebody who was a director of ATIP to know that list of 5 things like the back of their frigging hand. And when he's on an interview with the Washington Post, where he only names 4 things, and he says one of them twice, that, in my mind, is not acceptable. Yes, we can all get tongue twisted, like I have while making this video, but he should have made it perfectly clear. So what more can I say? Well, Lou, in my country, the word loo means toilet. And that's where the shit that comes out of your mouth should be. I am not a fan of yours. And until you come out and give an opinion, which you haven't been able to so far, then I'm afraid I'm going to stay that way for quite some time. Right, so this footage, I'm now going to show you exactly what we're looking at. Now it even says in the top left of the screen, it's an F-18 flying away. Oh, and look, we can see fins coming back up off the plane, which do actually show up in the footage, just like in one of Lou's pieces of footage. You know, considering this gentleman is using a high-grade flare camera, but the military-grade ones, I would expect more from them. I mean, in Lou's 60-minute interview, he mentions that pilots are trained to recognize things with their bare eyes from 25 miles away. So why the fuck can't he recognize a bird from less than 4 miles away? It's absolutely disgraceful. And for anybody who is a fan of him, maybe you should re-look into his footage. Maybe you should, when you're watching videos on YouTube where they only show a small snippet, which was the whole point of this video, instead of showing the full video, maybe you should look into where the full original footage came from. I did a debunk years ago where the particular channel talked about could this be anti-gravity, proof of anti-gravity propulsion on the super top secret plane. In actual fact, the super top secret plane, as I show at the end of the video, gets shown in front of tens of thousands of people in broad daylight in front of the friggin' Pentagon. And no, it wasn't using anti-gravity technology. But the brothers that put that out, they did change their ways big time. And they deserve to be the biggest YouTube channel when it comes to the 2 big boys, instead of Titler and his fake, oh, let's talk to Ken the Astronomer, where he's using a fake voice changer. Screw that guy. I mean, at least with the brothers, they were prepared to come into a lion's den where they did come multiple times and got ripped apart for what they were putting out at the time. But at least they had the balls to do it and to face the music, and they did change their ways. Whereas Titler, he hasn't got the balls to come in to the lion's den and speak to people like myself and others like me. But maybe one day Titler's balls will drop just like his 13-year-old friggin' audience. Right? Well, I'm bored with listening to my own voice now. So, I'll smell you later. Love. Q.